You know him from his dramatic entrances, his trademark breathing problems, and wicked love of puns as he's choking the life out of people. But who is Darth Vader really? Who was his real father? How does that armor of his work? Was he actually all that powerful? Or was it all just hype? So, CBR proudly presents Beneath the Mask, the real-life secrets behind Darth Vader. While we've seen a lot of Darth Vader over the years, we really don't get many glimpses on his perspective of galactic events. I mean, he really doesn't have enough time to talk politics in between the force choking and lightsaber carnage. Well, luckily we've got Dave Filoni to fill in some of the gaps. The creator behind Clone Wars, Rebels, The Mandalorian, and The Bad Batch is probably the biggest expert on Star Wars behind only George Lucas himself. So when he recently discussed Anakin's post-Vader thinking, it might as well be canon. As he explained it, the difference between Anakin and Vader's views on galactic affairs hasn't changed at all from his perspective. While characters like Obi-Wan and Yoda tell Luke that Anakin fell to the dark side, Anakin doesn't truly think he ever changed sides. From his perspective, the Jedi betrayed their own government, and everything he does as Vader is to protect the galaxy from horrors like the Clone Wars again. One of the weirdest moments in The Phantom Menace was the revelation that Anakin Skywalker had no father. The movie implies that Anakin was just a miracle born out of the Force itself. My first theory was that Shmi was just a liar, but then the comics revealed that it was actually Palpatine who manipulated the Force into producing Anakin. In the pre-Disney novel Darth Plagueis, it is explained that the Sith Lord and his apprentice Palpatine tried to reach out into the Force to create a child who would be their perfect weapon. Now it seems confirmed that this is exactly how Palpatine created Anakin Skywalker, effectively making him his father. This does make the sequel trilogy a bit awkward. If Anakin is Palpatine's son, that makes Ben Solo his great-grandson through the Force. So if Rey is Palpatine's granddaughter through cloning, wouldn't that make her and Ben related? I mean, that sort of thing was really popular in 2017 for some reason. One of the biggest crimes that Star Wars has ever committed is that Darth Maul and Darth Vader have never faced off against each other. I mean, the closest they ever got was when Maul nearly ran over little Anakin on a speeder bike like he was a pedestrian in Grand Theft Auto. One Legends comic did explore this idea in about as metal a way as possible. Vader fights against a resurrected Maul who claims that Vader isn't truly worthy enough to be Palpatine's apprentice and a true Sith Lord. The two then have a duel which ends in the most Vader way possible. As Maul is mocking Vader for the parts of Anakin that still live inside him and his metal body, Vader stabs through his own body to skewer Maul too. Maybe the canon Maul had a vision that this is how things would have gone down, and that's why he peaced out in Twilight of the Apprentice the moment Darth Vader dropped in. Smart move, Maul. Smart move. The original trilogy always talks about how insanely powerful Vader is, but does he ever live up to the hype? I mean, just compare this fight between him and Obi-Wan in A New Hope versus the famous Duel of the Fates in Phantom Menace. It really doesn't seem like Vader's powerful so much as he is a slow robot who had trouble striking down an old man. Well, the subsequent Star Wars stories after the original trilogy make it clear that Vader was holding back in his fights against Luke and Obi-Wan. Aside from that terrifying hallway scene in Rogue One that made Vader into Jason Voorhees, there's a moment in the comics that proves definitively that Vader is a one-man army. In my personal favorite Star Wars comic since Disney took over, Vader Down, Darth Vader's ship gets shot down, stranding him on a planet surrounded by rebels. While it seems like Vader is outnumbered, it turns out that the rebels didn't bring enough armies to handle him. This is the story where Vader really shows his Rorschach, I'm not locked in here with you, you're locked in here with me energy. He offers perhaps his finest line to date, all I am surrounded by is fear, and dead men, before he takes them all on. Why haven't we seen this on Disney+? In most video games where you get to customize your own lightsaber, it's presented as if different colors of crystals make different colors of sabers. Well, it turns out that it's a bit more complicated than that to get a red lightsaber. The Ahsoka book and subsequent comic revealed that in order to get that iconic red color, Vader had to pour all of his rage and hate into the Kyber crystal until it bleeds. I think that's the most Darth Vader thing I've ever heard. One of the biggest mysteries from the original trilogy that I didn't even realize was a mystery until they solved it was how Vader figured out the kid who blew up the Death Star was his son. In The Empire Strikes Back, Vader is always talking about young Skywalker like it's no big deal. This means that not only did he find out that Luke was Anakin Skywalker's son, but that he had enough time to process this information. It turns out that Boba Fett was hired to bring in the guy who blew up the Death Star. This doesn't go very well, mainly because Boba Fett's undeniable awesomeness wasn't truly explored until The Mandalorian. Fett does bring to Vader his name though, Skywalker. Upon hearing this name, Vader looks out a window at the galaxy, and in his rage he nearly shatters the window, which would have released him into the vacuum of space. One of the biggest continuity errors the prequel trilogy set up was when it was revealed that Anakin was the one who built C-3PO in the first place. This made a lot of people confused because Vader never seems to recognize him. Well, one of the Legends comics that I think should remain canon reveals that when they were both on Cloud City, Vader prevented the disassembled C-3PO from being destroyed. You don't get a lot of sweet moments from Darth Vader, but the scene where he's holding the droid's head and then flashes back to making him is about as wholesome as Vader gets. The Empire is all about rank. You've got commanders, captains, grand admirals, governors, moffs, and any other way an Imperial could rank someone. I'm sure even the bartenders in the Empire have a strict pecking order. Strangely enough, this does leave Darth Vader out. While he orders everyone around like he's their boss, no rank is ever given to Vader during the trilogy. They don't even really know that he's a Sith Lord, considering the fact that all of them think that the Jedi and their Force abilities were overblown in the Empire. That's why everyone seems so shocked every time he Force chokes someone who smarts off to him. So do they think he's just some sort of mad robot who gets to do whatever he wants? Well, it turns out that his official rank is Emissary of the Emperor, meaning that he works with the full authority of Palpatine himself. I wonder if that position comes with the cape or if he had that tailored himself. One of the biggest questions I've pondered over the years is what the standard Imperial citizen thought of Darth Vader. I mean, we see Vader mostly from the perspective of those that are terrified of him, but never of those that he was working to protect. I mean, he's practically the Empire's superhero. Did Imperial citizens think of him like Iron Man who was fighting those rebel villains? Did they think of him like Captain America, the official living symbol of the Empire? Did he have his own Star-Spangled Man theme song to the Imperial March? I really hope that last one is true. Vader was more like a secret one-man SEAL team than he really was a public figure. He operated in secret, taking care of the Empire's problems without anyone ever knowing about it. So in terms of Marvel characters, he was more of a Winter Soldier, which actually fits perfectly now that I think about it. I think one of the most interesting things about Vader is that no one knows that he was Anakin, but quite a few people know that he was the one who destroyed the Jedi. That leaves a very interesting question that I would like answered. Who did they think he was all that time? This kind of mystery makes Vader's terrifying presence in the original trilogy make a lot more sense in context. No one had the faintest idea of what was under the mask, and they were scared to even ask. The thing about burning off your face and walking around with a mask that changes your voice is that people from your old life rarely recognize you. It's one of the few perks of that particular situation. Unfortunately, that doesn't work when one of your old co-workers is a tactical genius with a keen eye for detail. That's how Grand Moff Tarkin figured out that Darth Vader was Anakin Skywalker all along. I mean, it makes sense if you go back and rewatch the original trilogy. Vader treats every single Imperial officer in the series like he's Sid from Toy Story, and they're all toys he found in his sister's room. Everyone except Tarkin. For the Grand Moff, Vader toes the line out of a sense of respect and a knowledge that Tarkin's the only one that actually knows something about him. Palpatine probably relies on Vader for more than he does anyone else in his command. That's pretty crazy when you consider just how volatile a person Vader is. I mean, your go-to employee should never be the one that you're pretty sure is going to try and cut your head off at least once. It was no surprise then to realize that Palpatine actually had a series of replacements in mind for Vader in case he should ever meet a mysterious end or, utterly betray him. Dr. Silo, the same man who designed Vader's armor, created a menagerie of cyborg warriors who could hypothetically out-Vader the man himself. So naturally, Vader destroyed each and every one of them in a brutal fashion. Like, how did none of you see that coming? There can be only two. The most important rule of the Sith. Seriously, Darth Vader has had enough apprentices over the decades that he could probably staff the Inquisitorius himself. The most famous one he had before the Disney days was Galen Marek, otherwise known as Starkiller from the Force Unleashed game. He was a rage machine who either ended up joining the Rebels or one of his clones hunted down Luke Skywalker. They were strange games. My favorite Legends apprentice was by far Lumia, also known as Shira Bree. This devout Imperial warrior was more or less a female Vader herself, complete with cybernetic augments and a fierce skill set. In the books, she was the one responsible for corrupting Vader's grandson to the dark side. Never saw Starkiller do that. Aside from Darth Vader, Grand Admiral Thrawn is by far my favorite Star Wars villain. He's like an evil alien Sherlock Holmes who loves kicking back with some artwork and crushing his enemies in a vice of brilliant military strategy. So it's no surprise that one of the Empire's most impressive military minds has a history with its most impressive warrior. The two warriors had a chance meeting during the Clone Wars and fought together. The two would then be reunited during their Imperial careers. It's a shame that we'll probably never see them team up in live action. Hopefully, the Bad Batch will feature a Thrawn/Vader team-up. One of the coolest little details in the prequel trilogy was the reveal that Darth Vader wasn't the first cyborg in Palpatine's employ. That honor would go to none other than General Grievous himself, the four-armed Jedi-slaying menace from Kali who commanded the droid army. It was later explained that a lot of the technology used to cyborgify Grievous was the same that saved Anakin Skywalker after he tumbled into molten hot magma. It was really lucky that Palpatine just so happened to have a former cyborg employee on the payroll, otherwise he would have been in some serious trouble. Though they did have to reprogram the voice card, because every time someone said, "Hello there," to Vader, he'd respond immediately with, "General Kenobi," before he could help it. I want to take a break really fast and show you some clips of cute little Grogu from The Mandalorian. Look at his adorable little face. Isn't he the most precious thing you've ever seen? Okay, that should soften the blow that Darth Vader's armor works by having hot needles stab painfully into his necrotic muscle tissue at all times, making every moment of Vader's life sheer agony that most of us could hardly endure, let alone live with well enough to be the fiercest warrior in the galaxy. I mean, I never exactly thought that it was comfortable in that armor, but I didn't quite know the finer points about that needle stabbery. This, coupled with the fact that Vader's charred flesh never truly heals and also causes him constant pain, gives you a grim image of what Vader's daily life is like. Show them a little more Baby Yoda. We all need a little more Baby Yoda after that. Anakin Skywalker was a pretty brave dude, but he did have a few things that he was absolutely terrified of. Sand, talking to girls like a normal person, sand, losing his lightsaber again, never seeing his mother again, and most of all, more sand, were all things that he was clearly scared of in the prequels. There was also a secret phobia that almost no one knew about, that made his inevitable fate all the more ironic: claustrophobia. Wearing the suit of armor truly brought out this anxiety within him. This, coupled with the extreme pain he felt at all times, probably explained why he was just so powerful with the dark side of the Force. It also explains why he was in a bad mood literally 100% of the time. The Legends books really had to get creative with stories since George Lucas was working on genius projects like Howard the Duck, instead of those stupid Star Wars movies everyone was always talking about. The 1992 novel The Glove of Darth Vader really showed how far that creativity would go. This novel showed that while the Emperor and thousands of Imperials were wiped out when the second Death Star exploded, Darth Vader's glove miraculously survived. You see, the right-hand glove of Darth Vader had an amulet in it that made the glove indestructible. That's why Vader used it to block Han Solo's blaster fire in Empire Strikes Back. You have to wonder why Vader didn't put the indestructible part of his body, like, on his chest or head. That may have helped deflect some of the Force lightning that eventually cost him his life. At least his leather glove was unscratched. That's something. Have you ever wondered what Vader eats or how? Well, you really shouldn't have, because the answer is disgusting. Apparently, what Vader consumed was a bitter nutrient paste that he had to suck through a straw. It tasted so bad that he preferred to be fed intravenously instead. I mean, I never really thought that he ate porterhouse bantha steak, but I didn't know it was quite that bad. Probably the biggest mystery hanging over the Star Wars original trilogy was what his actual long-term master plan really was. I mean, in Empire, he extends his hand to Luke and offers to train him to defeat the Emperor, so that the two of them could take him out and rule together as father and son. That certainly implies that he at least has a shell of a plan of what he could do with such immense intergalactic power. Now that Vader is getting more screen time in the next Obi-Wan Kenobi Disney Plus series, hopefully we'll get a little more light shed on this mystery, as well as the others hiding behind that iconic mask of his. There are many mysteries and questions still lurking about Star Wars' biggest villain. Of course, now that Disney is making 10,000 shows set in that universe from now until eternity, chances are all of them will be answered, and then some.